What does it mean to be an American? There are many values that link to what it means to being American. One of them is perseverance. Perseverance is continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, failure, or opposition. Throughout the year, we have learned about people throughout history and literature, displaying the value of perseverance, making them true Americans, and answering the question of what it means to be an American. One man who demonstrates the civic value of perseverance is Paul Revere. Paul Revere was born in Boston in December 1734. He grew up as the second child in a house of 12. His father was a gold and silversmith, and in addition to him attending school, he also learned the craft and took up an apprenticeship under his father. His father died when he was 19, and he ended up being the main source of income for his entire family. A few years later, he volunteered himself to war and earned himself the title as second lieutenant for the Colonial Artillery. He then got married to Sarah Orne and had 8 children with her. And when she passed away, he remarried and had 8 more children with his new wife, Rachel Walker. Paul Revere was known mostly for his midnight ride, but his career and community involvement was also a big part of who Revere was as an American. Paul Revere owned his own silver shop for more than 40 years. However, he had expanded the horizons of his shop to not just a silver shop, but an all-around craftsman shop. Even during hard economic times, he kept going and worked on dentistry and engraving copper plates. He was a superior craftsman of his day. Paul Revere really proved himself as an American when he joined the Sons of Liberty, a secret anti-British organization. Revere participated in the Boston Tea Party on December 16, 1773, as a protest against high British taxes. Revere quickly became a very important part in American history. One of his jobs was watching the movement of British soldiers, copies of resolutions and messages to places as far as New York and Philadelphia. This job included his midnight ride on the night of April 18, 1775, when he was sent to Lexington, Mass. To warn Samuel Adams and John Hancock that the British troops were coming. He also warned towns and Minutemen along the way. The plans really started 2 days before, and the event proved Paul Revere's perseverance, in turn proving that he was an American. Revere first rode to Concord warning patriots to move their military stores 2 days before the Battle of Lexington and Concord. He then set out to warn the visiting John Hancock and Samuel Adams the British were coming. There were 2 lanterns in the Old North Church steeple, signifying that the British were coming by sea. And at 10:30 p.m., Revere headed out and traveled 16 miles in 1 hour from Medford to Lexington, warning the countryside by shouting, "The regulars are out." And despite the rush and pressure of delivering the message, Paul Revere proved his perseverance by continuing traveling through the Boston area and risking being caught by British troops. Even after they successfully warned the men, they still had a 6-mile trip back to Concord. And even though he did get stopped and was forced to submit to the British, his patriotic nature could not be stopped, and throughout Revere's life, he persevered in being loyal to America. Another American, although a fictional character, also displays that they are a true American because of their perseverance. This character is Huck Finn from the book Huckleberry Finn, written by Mark Twain. In the story, Huck is the protagonist and narrator of the novel. He is a young 13-year-old boy who lives right off the Mississippi River in St. Petersburg, Missouri, with his drunk, abusive father. Huck Finn is from low white society from around the time of 1840, and he struggles in living his life uneducated and with little help from others. However, one day he decides to get away from all that, and Huck then runs away down the Mississippi River, faking his own death and teaming up with a black man, Jim, in danger of being sold to a brutal plantation owner as a slave and separated from his family. Huck faces challenges involving society and morality that he perseveres through. When Huck perseveres through all of his challenges, he shows and proves that the civic value of persevering is part of what it means to be an American. One example of Huck persevering through a challenge is when Huck encounters a group of men at night on the river, looking for runaway slaves. Huck did not know what to tell the men because Jim was his friend, and he had learned that although he was black, he was still a person and had feelings and a family just like any other man would. However, Huck was also taught that blacks are lesser in society and are property, which technically meant that Huck was in possession of stolen property. In the end, Huck was on a mission with Jim, and they were a team. He wasn't just going to give him up like that. So Huck persevered through the pressure of society and the men on him, and he listened to his own conscience and made up a lie that instead of it being Jim, the runaway slave on the boat, that it was his very sick, contagious father, and he was left alone by the slave hunters. Huck Finn proved that being an American involved persevering through difficult situations and opposition from society. Huck even reached his final goal in the very end of the book, reaching his American dream by using the civic value perseverance. Huck finally proved to many people around him in society that blacks weren't bad and that they deserved to be treated equally, all because he followed through and stuck it out until the end, and when he learned his father was dead, and when Jim was paid for being held prisoner and got treated much better. Despite where Huck started from, with no civility or education, he learned a lot by persevering on the journey down the river, through all the hard times. Being challenged and accomplishing tasks that you have never accomplished before is all about what it means to be an American, and Huck did that through perseverance. Just as Huck combated racism with perseverance, so did Martin Luther King Jr. in real life. Martin Luther King Jr. was a great American who added so much to our society today. He is recognized mostly by his "I Have a Dream" speech. Martin Luther King showed perseverance through his civil rights campaign, which he proved he was a true American. He was born on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, a son of Martin Luther King Sr., and middle child of 3. He grew up in a very religious family and went to a segregated high school, where he skipped 2 grades and at age 15 attended and graduated from Morehouse College with a degree in sociology, and after went on to earn another degree for divinity or religious studies at Crozer Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania. Martin Luther King was a very studious and eager person, persevering through the difficulties of receiving a good education. He married a woman named Coretta Scott and had 4 children with her. He then started his career at age 25 as a pastor of a Baptist church in Montgomery, Alabama, the start of preaching his ideas to the world about civil rights. Martin Luther King wanted change in the African American community for all blacks to be treated equally with whites and to stop segregation. He believed that all this could happen without violence, unlike many other civil rights leaders. He believed that they could be spiritually aggressive without being violent. His goal was to shame the oppressors, being the whites, and to directly attack the evil system of segregation and unequal treatment of blacks, legally and socially. Since Martin Luther King was religious, he believed that God was on their side of justice, and that they should never stop fighting for their rights. He thought that they should continue with the movement until they received what they deserved. The ideas of Martin Luther King Jr.'s never giving up and persevering through what seems impossible is what makes him a true American. Martin Luther King even went to extremes, leading parades and marches through Birmingham, Alabama, an extremely racially segregated city, only to be arrested and put into jail for having a parade without a permit. And even though Martin Luther King Jr. was leading a nonviolent campaign, police still took violent actions against him and his followers. They sent attack dogs and sprayed fire hoses into huge crowds of blacks. After years of fighting back, Martin Luther King Jr. did finally get one step closer to what blacks deserved. His speeches and nonviolent events were broadcasted all over the country, which prompted change, and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which ended discrimination in hiring practices, was established. Martin Luther King should be a role model for what every American should strive to be. By persevering through hard times and struggles, you will one day reach your American dream. A man who accomplished his American dream through perseverance also is Chris McCandless, written about in the book Into the Wild. He was a transcendentalist young man yearning for adventure and to experience life. He is a very intelligent person, and before he abandoned his life at home, he was a genius in high school and college. However, at the same time, very socially awkward, as many intellectual people are. Chris had the belief that life was best lived alone in nature, so he took off traveling around the western United States with nothing except himself to test that theory. Then he went to the cold, harsh wilderness of Alaska, only to end his life. Chris showed perseverance by continuing in his journey and not stopping. He would not let anyone stop him from accomplishing his own goals, wants, and needs. Although his parents and sister did not want him to leave and were very worried about him, he did not let that get in the way. Chris grew up in a family of hard-working parents who he was quite distant from, and a sister who he was close to. He never really connected with his parents because of differences in beliefs and how to live. Although his family was quite wealthy, he never had any desire for material goods, which his parents often forced on him. When Chris graduated from Emory University, he set out traveling in his old used car for what he told his parents the summer, but really to get away from his life at home forever. So his parents wouldn't find him, he changed his name to Alexander Supertramp and used the nickname Alex when introducing himself to people. He made sure to hold his mail so his parents wouldn't find out that he was not living in his apartment until the end of the summer, and had less of a chance to find him. By taking these steps, he was persevering through his journey, making sure that nothing would stop him. In the beginning of his trip, his car gets damaged by a flash flood and stuck in Lake Mead National Recreation Area in Nevada, forcing him to abandon his car and continue his trip on foot. He then spent 2 years wandering around the country, living free-spirited, encountering dangerous occurrences on the way, including getting in trouble with the law, suffering from heat stroke in the Mojave Desert, and being completely lost and almost drowning on his canoeing adventure in the Gulf of Mexico. Despite the dangers Chris faced, he persevered through them and did not let them stop his journey. He then finally makes his way up to Alaska and prepared himself to live in the wild by reading textbooks about the types of plants you can eat and what is poisonous in the Alaskan bush. He then steps into the wild. In the wilderness of Alaska, he makes an old abandoned bus for a home. He is mostly successful getting along in the cold and finding himself food in the harsh environment. Although he had his troubles for a while, he went with no food at all and lost a ton of weight. But still he persevered through it and did not let his trip end. He kept his spirits up so he did not die. But alas, all things must come to an end, and Chris McKinless' life came to an end. But because of his perseverance, his legacy is still alive today. The value of perseverance is important to what it means to be an American, and over the course of the year, we have learned about many literary characters and historical figures whose value of perseverance